Well, welcome listeners to Siouxland Catholic Radio, 88.1 FM. This is Faith in Action, and I'm Lisa Niebuhr in with Ann Reed on behalf of Joanne Fox, and a special thanks to our friends at Mary's Choice, a pregnancy resource center here in Sioux City that provides support and allows us to be able to bring you Faith in Action on air, online, on the Siouxland Catholic Radio app. Today, we are excited to be sharing with you a wonderful ministry and program that is coming to Sioux City March 15th, 16th, and 17th at Mater Dei Parish, entitled Life-Giving Wounds. If you heard Teresa Tomio's interview in January with Bethany Miola, I'd like to share with you just this brief overview in case you haven't, because I think it really brings to mind the importance of why this retreat coming to Sioux City. Over half of the people in the United States today will experience the splitting up of their parents, statistics say. Yet no matter how normal divorce becomes, it inflicts us in a profound way, not only on parents, but the children, whether they're young or grown. Children of divorce are fractured on the very level of their being, their heart, their mind, and their soul. And if left untended, this break could pain them for the rest of their lives, tinging their relationships, their faith, and their capacity for joy. When you come to Life-Giving Wounds, March 15th, 16th, and 17th, you will embark upon a path for recovery for adult children, whether it's through the reference of those who love and care for you or through your own activities. Daniel and Bethany Miola are going to not only draw from their personal experiences, but their academic research, their theological formation, and accompanying hundreds of individuals. They provide compassionate, spiritually rich, and psychologically sound guidance to be able to help all of us. They provide us new ways of grieving, of praying, of hoping, of loving, forgiving, trusting, and committing to one's vocation. So it is my privilege to introduce to you Daniel and Alex. Welcome, gentlemen, to Faith in Action here on Siouxland Catholic Radio.
Great to be here with you.
Thank you, Lisa. Good to be here.
Daniel and Alex, will you please introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Daniel Miola. I'm the co-founder of Life-Giving Wounds, along with my wife, Bethany, who couldn't be here with us today. And Life-Giving Wounds is the apostolate to adult children in divorce or separation, anybody who's lost the love of their parents together, and to bring them Christ's healing. And we're excited to be coming to Sioux City.
And I'm Alex. I was a classmate of Dan's when we were students together at the Pontifical John Paul II Institute for Marriage and Family Studies. Dan had this stroke of genius when we were back in grad school and decided to take all of this research and put it together into a retreat for people to go on. I eventually went on that retreat myself. I work for the Diocese of Arlington, and I decided to work with Dan and my own office to establish a more regional ministry. And from there, Life-Giving Wounds has taken off, and it's been an honor to be a part of the whole movement.
Daniel, will you explain the retreat for us and give us an overview of what people will expect the evening of Friday, March 15th and going until Sunday afternoon, March 17th?
Yeah, so the retreat takes a very compassionate and loving approach to these wounds. So we always like to say it's go at your own pace. But we follow the Paschal mystery. We kind of have three moments in our retreat, what we call like a dying moment, a rising moment, and a going forth moment. The dying moment is we will look at the wounds from our family of origin, different areas that have been affected, for instance, our ability or inability to grieve. We'll look at how it's affected our faith, how it's affected our relationship, our emotional life, how we approach forgiveness, etc. And then we're going to be inviting Christ all along through prayer, unique prayer experiences, the sacraments, scriptural meditation, into that pain and asking Him for guidance. And then we'll also do small group. And on Sunday, we invite them to go forward. We give them a pathway of healing for whatever wound that they're dealing with. We try to give them very specific guidance along the way and to give them a path forward from the retreat to get further healing. So that's kind of an overview of what the retreat does. Maybe Alex can talk about, who's this retreat good for and your experience coming to it.
So this retreat is for anyone whose parents are divorced or separated. I think that a lot of people try to convince themselves that this retreat is not for them. They think, I'm not affected because my parents divorced when I was an adult, or I don't even remember when they're together. So am I really affected? Or, it happened so long ago, or my parents got divorced and I got a job and I got married and I had kids, and maybe I'm not affected at all. But no matter what people try to tell themselves, we're all affected. This is a deep wound, as you said, at the level of being. Our faith is affected. Our identity is affected. Our emotions are affected. And so this retreat is for anyone who's faced this experience. You don't have to be someone who's been just kind of, handicapped by this wound. Anyone whose parents have divorced will find this retreat helpful.
Is the divorce harder, gentlemen, from your experiences? The divorce happened when I was a younger child or whether I was older?
I would like to probably say I don't like comparing the two. I think they're both bad. They both have differences. I mean, there is some differences, growing up, you're developmentally just don't have the capacity to handle the trauma as much as an adult. Yet as an adult, there's unique difficulties because you're expected to get over it right away, whereas children, there's a little bit more leeway to be sad. So I've seen both situations equally devastating and equally affecting the person. So I don't like comparing which one's better or worse. And just to say the retreat, the ministry is for both of these situations. And Alex said, too, like anybody who's lost the love of their parents together, cohabitation dissolution, if your parents received an annulment, all these different situations we minister to. So, again, I don't like comparing them. I think they all have their own wounds, and we're there for whatever situation.
Yeah, and I would just say that it's different, what the circumstances are. The effects are then different. So, for example, if your parents divorced when you were really young, you might not have a clear picture of the unity of marriage once you become older and you're getting married yourself. On the other hand, if you saw your parents married for 25, 30, whatever, how many years, and then they get divorced, you might live with a certain kind of anxiety in your own marriage, thinking, oh, well, what if my spouse leaves me after that long? And so there's different effects. But yeah, not good to compare, but it affects you no matter what.
On the phone with us, we have Daniel and Alex from Life Giving Wounds. They will be coming to Mater Dei Parish on March 15th, 16th, and 17th. What are some of the dangers of stuffing down those feelings of your parents' divorce during childhood?
Well, it'd be childhood or even adulthood, because adults are good at stuffing feelings in the trunk, too. I mean, one, the danger is you have these problems in relationships with God, and you just don't know where they're coming from. You feel stuck. You have a difficulty maintaining relationships. You feel alone even when you're in relationships, and you don't know where that kind of comes from. If that's you, then I would say that's a danger of stuffing emotions down, because when we do that, we don't become aware of where we're wounded, and then we don't know the path forward. So really, the only way we can have a path forward and to live more joyfully, more loving, more faithfully in the present moment is to look at that past, to look at those past wounds and see how it's affecting me, to know the path forward. So I think that's the biggest danger, is you impede healing, love, and connection that the Lord wants to give to you to heal what, some of these other symptoms that you might feel, like loneliness.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that is that there's a danger of repeating the cycle of divorce if these wounds are not healed. For example, if you don't look at this wound and work through towards forgiveness, for example, you might become just so bitter in your own marriage. And how do marriages end? With a lack of forgiveness. And so I think that's a very concrete possibility if people just stuff those feelings down and don't address them.
I look at our daughter. She's dating a young man whose parents have been divorced. He has trust challenges and he has problems with relationships because he's concerned. Is it possible that if we were to say to Elizabeth, Bobby needs to come, can she come so that way she can help him through those challenges and build a stronger relationship, whether or not they get married?
Typically, what we recommend in this situation is that Bobby would come first on his own because he needs some time to individually process these things, and then he takes it back and would talk with your daughter. That's how I would recommend. Give him a space, give him some time alone to process, like on the retreat support group, and then absolutely talk to your daughter about how this is affecting him and how can he grow. And just offer a word of encouragement and hope in that situation. We've seen this all the time. there is a lot of trust issues from one's parents' divorce, separation, but it's absolutely something you can work through, and not only work through, but as you learn to trust and connect in a healthy way, it can become a resource for your love, because there's a lot of people from intact homes that take, trust, vulnerability, connection, communication for granted, and they might have some things that they have to work on as well. So, again, I would recommend, yes, absolutely, this program would be excellent for him. He's not alone, and this is something that we deal with all the time. But to do it as an individual initially, and then to take it back and have these deep conversations with your daughter.
We've also had, on a couple of occasions, a married couple where both parties were children of divorce. They've come on the retreat kind of together, but kind of did a retreat, kind of a personal retreat, where they were in different small groups and they were able to kind of process on their own at first, but then rejoin with each other at the end of the day or at lunch or after the retreat and kind of work through it together.
So the retreat is for the child that's gone through the divorce, not necessarily their spouse or their family members. Am I correct?
That is correct, yes. But we do encourage them as a necessary part of their healing to take back what they learned and have those deep conversations.
Another question, gentlemen, for you both is, it's not uncommon for couples to get a divorce when their children are older or when they become empty nesters. Is this any less traumatic, and how might it affect a person?
They call it gray divorce when the children are up and out of the house, the parents are empty nesters, and then they break up. This is no less damaging. Like I said, it's a little bit different. I mentioned that anxiety, but there's also going to be issues with faith and identity. Right? We conceive of ourselves as the child of these two people. Their bond brought me into this world. Now that bond is disappearing, so what does that mean about me? How do I even continue to exist here? I look like my parent. So there's all of these different kinds of questions that are still going to be present no matter, how late it happens.
Yeah, I mean, two of the definitions of trauma that I like best is a negative event that damages us and outpaces our capacity to cope, and it leaves us lonely. And based on those definitions of trauma, absolutely, parental divorce in adulthood can outpace your ability to cope with it and leave you incredibly lonely. And again, the first step for healing, this is why the retreat is so important and has helped so many people, is to move from that place of loneliness and begin to share this grief, share this burden with others who get it, who know it, who are suffering a very similar wound, although our stories differ. We are able to receive it because we know it from the inside, and that makes that trauma more bearable. It doesn't make it go away, but it makes it more bearable. It makes it, we like to say, turns it into suffering that's more bearable. So, yeah, we have seen with gray divorce that can be very traumatic. And so if that's you who's listening to this interview, please come. We regularly have a lot of adult children of gray divorce where their parents call it quits after you were an adult. And it's very difficult. It's interesting, in my own story, I kind of straddled both sides because my parents separated when I was 11, but divorced when I was 26. And at each stage, it had a unique wound and effect negatively on my life that needed to be looked at.
So, gentlemen, you're telling us that this is a lifelong process, that when folks arrive on March 15th at Mater Dei here in Sioux City for life-giving wounds, you are going to start them on a lifelong process for healing, not only emotionally and physically, but also spiritually too. Am I correct? And how does that look, or what are some of the lifelong steps that people can do from here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't profess that you come in on this weekend retreat and you walk out completely healed. Far from it, actually. This would be the beginning, maybe, of someone's healing journey, or hopefully a turning point. A milestone in their journey. But we quickly found out, as we both started getting involved in ministering in this way, we realized people immediately after a retreat experience want follow-up support. And so we've got all kinds of support groups. I run a book club in Arlington. We've got all kinds of resources, podcasts, Spotify play, just a ton of things that people can turn to. But the big thing is leading them to Christ and connecting them with each other as they continue to go forward.
Yeah, and just to add to that answer, what we're trying to do is equip them to walk with Christ in response to this particular wound. So we give them very specific guidance and advice to how to grow in faith, hope, and love in response to this wound. When I talk about healing, I'm not talking about the absence of pain, although we hope that's lessened. We're talking about a way of life with Christ in response to the wound, because there's an aspect of the wound we can control, which is our response to it, and there's an aspect we can't control, which is our parents' divorce or separation, which continues to remain, continues to have dysfunction, continues to rear its head at milestones and holidays and things like that. But it absolutely can, with healing, and I've seen this again and again, we can have greater peace confronting those situations. It can have less of a hold on our hearts as we develop with Christ the virtue necessary for handling these situations, and eventually we get a person to they can absolutely thrive in their vocation and break that cycle in so many ways. So that's what we want to move them towards. It's not necessarily the absence of the pain, but a vibrant way of life with Christ in response to the wounds.
Alex, you've got some national support groups and have that Arlington chapter. What do some of your support groups and resources look like in Arlington?
So in Arlington, we have a book club. So our retreat is in the fall and about the September timeframe. We have a book club that runs this year. We'll start in March and go through the end of April. We'll meet about 7 times. We've read some prominent books. The Wound of Divorce, we've read this book called Between Two Worlds by Elizabeth Markwart, Primal Loss by Layla Miller, Torn Asunder, which is a collection of essays edited by Margaret McCarthy. And this year, we'll be reading Dan and Bethany's new book called Life-Giving Wounds, A Catholic Guide for Healing. And so Dan will tell you about that in a moment. This book club will meet 7, 8, 9 times, and then we'll get together for Mass at the beginning and the end. Yeah, so we also have, on occasion, like a Mass and reception or Mass and brunch type of event. We like to offer this in Advent, since Christmas can be so tough to navigate for children of divorced parents. And so throughout the year, we just have a couple of different offerings to help people.
So the hope is in Sioux City that we're not just running a one-and-done retreat, but we're setting up a local chapter that can do book clubs, it can do support groups. In addition to what Alex is doing in Arlington, we have a new support group curriculum, which hopefully he'll roll out as well. We also do online ministry, as Alex alluded to, in the interim, where we have online support groups, we have an online community. And then, as Alex mentioned, we just recently published a book with Ignatius Press in November 2023 that goes deep into the different areas, 7 different areas you may have been wounded in from your parents' divorce or separation, and then ways to heal. And in that book, we also, to your earlier question, talk about how do you heal as a couple, and we hope to produce even more materials about that question. The point is, for Sioux City, we hope this is the beginning of a chapter and to offer robust support for those on the ground. And I also might add, every chapter has a team counselor and chaplain. What I've seen in my work for people that need healing is they often need 1, 2, or 3 things, and those are counseling, spiritual direction, and peer support. We're trying to provide peer support, and then we're bridges to counseling and spiritual direction at the local chapter, and that absolutely will be offered even from the first days of this chapter in Sioux City.
Well, Daniel and Alex, thank you so very much. And listeners, as you've been hearing, Daniel and Alex and Bethany from Life-Giving Wounds will be at Mater Dei Parish Friday, March 15th, Saturday, March 16th, and Sunday, March 17th. If you are a child who has parents who have gone through a divorce, this is a tremendous opportunity for you to be able to grow through these life-giving wounds and build a new path for hope and life. You can register now online at materdeisc.com/life-giving-wounds or call Mater Dei Parish in Sioux City. Daniel and Alex, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll ask you listeners to stay tuned because we've got another guest coming right up. And what a fabulous interview via the phone with Daniel and Alex from Life-Giving Wounds. And just a reminder, listeners, and it was my aha in that conversation, that regardless of the type of divorce situation that you've gone through, whether it was when you were an adult and they were empty nesters, whether it was an abusive divorce, regardless, we want you to join Mater Dei Parish Friday, March 15th, Saturday, March 16th, and Sunday, March 17th for Life-Giving Wounds. This is a healing retreat, ladies and gentlemen, to help stop those fear-stopping cliches, that negative experience to now a healing experience. To talk more about this, we are very honored to have Draw Near's Fred Schellebarger in studio. Fred is also working with Mater Dei on discipleship. Thanks, Fred, for coming today.
Happy to be here, Lisa. Thank you.
So, Fred, Mater Dei has been expanding a lot of its parish ministries.
Mm-hmm.
What has led to that growth at Mater Dei the past few years?
Well, I think at Mater Dei Parish, it has been, honestly, a lot of the staff, they just really have, out of the depths of their own spiritual life and their hunger for more of Christ, and that translates into wanting to give Christ to others. And I think it also comes out in a forward thinking, doing things a little bit differently than we've done in the past, and being willing to take risks. I think of the last year's program we had. I think we started in March or April, and we started doing these regular retreats every month, and some other programs that would come up, throughout the year. And the very first one, we only had 8 people. And when you work in church world, there's that temptation. That's not enough. That doesn't justify it. But no, we're going to do this, even if one shows up. And sure enough, by the end of the year, each one kept getting bigger and bigger. And now we're having some small groups meeting, and they're continuing that journey. Like last night, I had a Wild Goose. It's a study on the Holy Spirit, and several of the people that came were like, I came because of the parish mission and the gifts workshop, and this just seems like the next step. And it's just beautiful to see. Yes, exactly. That's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to lay out a vision for whole person formation at Mater Dei, reaching as many people as we can at Mater Dei so that they can reach others.
So you're not particularly targeting young or old. You are trying to hit every parishioner throughout their journey in life.
Yes, that's the best way to say that, I think, but also so that they can hit everyone else also. So that the reality is the only gospel that some people will ever read is you.
What are some of you talked a little bit about the Wild Goose. You had last year the Bread of Life conference. You've had date night. What are some of the other opportunities that you've had over the past year?
So some of those regular monthly things we've had is a How to Evangelize workshop that we did, where I made them uncomfortable. They had to role play how to evangelize, but that was a good thing, how to pray with people. This coming Sunday, at the time of this recording, Saturday, we have an apologetics workshop. A lot of these sorts of things to help build on what we're doing and meet as many needs as we possibly can. I know our next marriage date night, for example, will be on building on this life-giving wounds topic. Will be on how to deal with the wounds you bring with you into marriage.
And do I need to be a Mater Dei parishioner? Can I be from the Archdiocese of Omaha, the Catholic Diocese of Sioux Falls? Or can I just come and not even necessarily be a Catholic, but drawn to the ministry that you're doing?
That's part of the beauty of it. At all these events, we've had parishioners from other parishes around, and folks from South Sioux have come over. If you're at Sunnybrook, come. If you're an atheist, come. I know that's especially true for Alpha, for Catholics. It's just called Alpha, but we are using the Catholic context one. But anyway, that starts March 4th, and Alpha is really designed to be a program where whatever you believe, we're going to get together and we're going to talk about what we believe, and we're on a journey together. For listeners that aren't familiar with Alpha, it starts not necessarily Catholic, not necessarily spiritual, but is entirely gospel. And by the end of it, you're at a place where you're starting to pray, you're starting to live that relationship with Christ, and you have to make a decision, where do I go next? Maybe it's RCIA, maybe it's going to confession, Maybe it's jumping into one of these other things we're offering at Mater Dei.
So March 15th, 16th, and 17th, you're bringing in Daniel and Bethany Miola from Life-Giving Wounds. Mm-hmm. Why did you select them, and how did you hear about them?
Well, for my part, I wasn't a part of that. This was already in the works when I came on board. So Gracie Ortiz, who used to work at the diocese, yep. She knows them well. She was the director of marriage and family life, and she had said many good things about this program. I remember having conversations about her, and I've Googled it because I wanted to learn more, and I can tell it's good stuff. First of all, on their website, they have a Blink-182 song as part of their and I'm like, wow, that's cool. I like that, because I wouldn't expect that. It's a good way to reach people that have these wounds. And I think the diocese in Mater Dei started to work together on bringing life-giving wounds in. There's definitely a value in this. And I think at Mater Dei we recognize that divorce causes wounds. And I think a lot of people have experienced the pain of divorce. If the statistics hold up, that's 50% of marriages typically end in divorce. The general Catholic population, that statistic is the same, unfortunately, in the world and in the Catholic Church. So many of us have experienced this pain, but most of us stuff those wounds down. And I know that's especially true in conversations I've had with folks older than me. They kind of just don't talk about it. Like how they've gotten through is they just don't talk about it. They don't think about it. But those wounds leave traces and leave hurts. And as we were coming in, I was thinking about this and praying about what to share with the listeners. And I remembered this conversation I had at Mater Dei with someone in one of my small groups. And she was talking about having an angry father growing up. And I remembered another time with another person saying they had a very cold and distant mother. But they never knew why. That was their only experience of them. And I think that experience gets to the heart of why this is important. Because we bring our own wound. We don't learn how to be angry fathers. We don't learn how to be, or I should say, we don't set out to be an angry father.
Correct.
We don't set out to be a cold and distant mother. What happens is that woundedness that we keep in our heart and we never address manifests in that way. Hurt people, And that's why it's important to seek out healing. And that's why, ultimately, why Mater Dei wants to do this is to bring people healing so that we can have stronger, holier, healthier Catholic families, so that we can transform the world around us through the joy of the gospel. First, we have to transform our homes and renew our homes. And in order to do that, we need to help people discover and understand and be able to work through their brokenness and their wounds and get healing.
And so oftentimes somebody gets sick, we take them to the doctor's office. Somebody gets a cut, we do that. And yet you're right, as the conversation was wrapping up with Daniel, I was reflecting on my college roommate. Her folks had gotten separated and then divorced, and watching that wound grow and not having the opportunity to be able to talk about it because her father was a Protestant pastor. I could see that going on, but I was having difficulty being able to reach her and to connect with her and to help her work through this. And that's the wonderful gift of this retreat is now we're talking about not only those emotional wounds, but more importantly, those spiritual wounds, so we can raise good, solid Catholic families. And we don't continue that perpetualness of if something's not right, we aren't going to fix it, or we're going to let that wound manifest and cause other problems.
Absolutely. And that's just the thing. Recently, I've been doing a lot more introspection and examining my own heart, just how the Lord is working in my life right now. And I found myself asking the question, why, about a lot of the things I do. And I think many of us experience parental guilt, for example, parents that are listening. We've experienced that before. But I found myself not just feeling guilty about, why did I talk to my son that way? I wish I wouldn't have done that. But why did I talk to my son that way? Now I want to get to the root of it. What's at the root of it? It's this woundedness that comes from my own marriage and family experiences as a child and growing up. And I use that as an example of stuffing it down because that was me. My parents divorced very early in my life, shortly after I was born. And so I had experiences, heard things. My mom got married, had a stepdad, grew up, and it wasn't the easiest home by any means. And then fast forward, let's say 30 plus years, and my father comes back into my life, and I start learning, wow, things are very different than I thought. And what happens is if you've stuffed all that stuff down for years, suddenly you start to question everything, like your identity, who I am, like how I think, how I process, why do I do this? And so that's a good thing.
It is a wonderful thing because you're working to become the very best and providing us that guidance and direction to be the very best. And Fred, the other great thing I love is You're saying, I'm doing this for me.
Right.
I've been in those shoes. Daniel, Bethany, Alex have also been in those shoes. So it's not like
Right.
somebody preaching from the choir, or it's somebody saying, I've walked this journey. I'm walking you with this journey.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of this retreat.
Yeah. And I think that really gets to the heart of the gospel too, is we are wounded so that we can heal others with the similar wounds. Like we are wounded healers. We become healers for others who have experienced the same troubles. And you see that at Life Giving Wounds. And we need help in this journey.
So how do we register, Fred? It's March 15th, 16th, and 17th. We go online to Mater Dei.
Yep, matterdaysc.org. Go to the parish website, and it's literally right on the front page. We also make hotels easy for you because we've worked out a great deal with the Hampton Inn here in town.
And I can't bring my spouse. It's just me, not my kids, the adult child who's gone through divorce, correct? From what Daniel was explaining during the first part of our interview.
Yes, that sounds correct. Yep.
And then the cost is how much?
$250. Now, we do have scholarships available. If you email the contact on the website.
Jeff Scoop will be able to help you with that.
Yeah, we can help you. We got the scholarship written, the application, and you just fill it out. It doesn't take too long. It's pretty painless. It's a few questions. And it won't necessarily make it free. Certainly will reduce the cost if that's an issue.
You've got people, I understand, from Jeff Scoop, 3 adult women who are coming, who have been waiting for this retreat. This is one of the few opportunities that are coming. So you've got room for approximately 40 people. What's the deadline for registration?
I would give at least register by a week in advance, please. So we have time to order enough food. So that would be March 8th. I would register by then. I think that gives the caterer
Plenty of time.
Plenty of time. So.
And I can't come for part of it. I have to dedicate myself to that full weekend retreat.
Correct. This is the kind of thing you want the whole experience. Yeah, I would encourage you to come the whole experience. It's no matter your age, no matter where you are. Even if you're listening thinking, my parents divorced, I'm fine. I don't need to go to this. Yes, you do. If you literally just had that thought, this isn't for me, you need to come to this.
And that's what Daniel has said too, and Alex and the other folks that have been on the different retreats is the minute you say it's not for me, you are that perfect person.
Right. Yeah.
Catholic Charities, Amy Block is going to be there the full weekend. Why are you bringing in those support and other professionals to be a part of the retreat? Because
events like this can open wounds, and sometimes when wounds get opened, you need a professional, you need somebody to help you work through it. And talk about things. You need someone there to support you and help you work through them. So Amy will be, it's wonderful. I'm happy that she'll be there. You know, if someone gets triggered or that trauma becomes a little too upfront for them, she can help them, minister to them in her own way and kind of walk through them with that. I think that's a good thing.
And what I also love is Catholic Charities has that national network. So wherever you go, whether it's 20 years from now, and you're still having some challenges, you've got that Catholic support from Catholic Charities that's going to help you grow.
Yeah.
Fred, you were also talking a little bit about, as we talk about this 3-day retreat, March 15th, 16th, and 17th, Life-Giving Wounds, the importance of why Lent. And Sister Miriam James' quote saying, we are to transform these wounds, not transmit these wounds. Can you elaborate more on that comment?
Well, honestly, that goes right back to what I was saying. The angry father, the cold, distant mother. Why did I talk to my son like that? That's a place where I've come to in my life where I've realized out of my own hurt and woundedness and brokenness, I can become the very thing that hurt me if I'm not careful. Like I need that healing to help me work through so I don't fall into those same patterns. I don't know why that happens, but so often in life we find that hurt people, And so take, for example, recently I was having a discussion with someone who may or may not have been my spouse. And I was expressing how I felt about a particular thing. And she said, well, that's not me, that's your mom talking. And it just struck me like, oh, I am expressing anger and frustration outwardly, but really it's coming from a place of my own woundedness and brokenness. So I need healing in that spot so I don't hurt others. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, yes.
And so I think also there is a place where we don't want to rest in our woundedness, like in the sense that we wear it as a badge of honor. I'm always like skeptical of, because I've experienced this before, where sometimes people love their woundedness, but not in a redemptive way, not in a healing way. It's in a one-upmanship way. Oh, like, your life's been hard? Let me tell you, my life's been way harder. That's not healthy either. So I hear an element of that. I know that's probably not what she meant, but I hear an element of that in what she's saying. And I think Life-Giving Wounds offers an opportunity where if you tend to be one of those people that do that, this gives you a better idea of what that woundedness is supposed to be. It's supposed to be healing. It's supposed to be your weakness actually becomes your strength. That's what's supposed to happen.
And not that badge of honor. I love that.
Right.
That title. That makes it easier to understand. That say, no, it really isn't a badge of honor. And how do you transform your life and make your life better?
Right.
And then how will this build on for future date nights? Let's say I come and then Paul and I come to a future date night. How will that build upon spiritual growth?
Yeah, so the next marriage date night, which we don't have a date yet, but we'll kind of take some of these concepts, but apply them to any married couple that comes, or engaged couple. I love that about marriage date night. Engaged couples come too. We've had a couple that have come, and that's wonderful. But so we'll be looking more broadly at the wounds we carry into our marriages, and how do we work through these things, and what are the best ways of coping. And so I think it will continue to build on this, but it's a wider audience, because not everyone can afford 3 days.
Yep.
To that time. Not everyone can afford $250, but more people can afford $40 and a Friday night, except for I think it'll be on a Saturday night next time. So it's trying to communicate a lot of these ideas to a broader audience. And if they need more, Life-Giving Wounds.
There's hope down the road that, depending upon the attendance, etc., looking at either starting a chapter here in Siouxland or a support group, but there will be resources available, including Daniel and Bethany's books, collaborations in the future, to be able to take it not just from a one and done thing, but to continue to be there and help you as a part of that journey.
Yeah, that is as my understanding, and it's definitely... that is always the goal, and that's the best way to do ministry. And I think at Modern Day, that's one thing we've really set out to do, is we don't just have one-off events for the sake of having a one-off event that's really cool. We got a lot of people come or whatever. Like, there's a progression, and there's like, we're going places and building on things. So I see that absolutely as being a part of that.
What other events do you have planned coming up in the future at Modern Day?
So presently we are we're doing the Wild Goose Holy Spirit study, and that is leading up to, as a parish, we'll pray the Holy Spirit Novena, which will be that last week of Wild Goose, and then we're going to have a Holy Spirit themed retreat on May 18th, I believe it is, and that'll be the day before Pentecost. So a lot of emphasis on the Holy Spirit at Modern Day. So I love that. We have in April, I don't have the date yet, but we have a How to Pray for Other People workshop coming up.
That's exciting.
And that's because we're developing a prayer teams ministry at Modern Day, which I'm really excited about, because that can be very impactful.
Tell us a little bit about that, because Father Mark Barron, on one of Joanne's former Faith in Actions, talked about fueling our faith in our prayer teams. What is the prayer teams going to look like at Modern Day Parish? So I'm presently working on developing all of the training materials and all that for it. But essentially, the simplest idea of it is that, and Father Rupp, I'll give him credit, he used to do something like this years ago when he was at Modern Day. But it's basically after Mass, so-and-so will be available up front if you'd like someone to pray with you. And Father Rupp, he was always that someone. But this takes the idea that as lay people, we can pray for one another. And Father Brad, Father Mark, they don't necessarily have the extra time to be able to pray
and plus, they're usually in the confessional right after Mass, because I don't know if you've noticed, at Modern Day, we tend to have long confession lines. I
was going to say, whether it's the Siouxland Youth Group or Mass on the weekends,
right,
etc., long confession line.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. I love that. basically, so-and-so will be available after Mass to pray with you. And I think there's a lot of people out there that when they come to Mass, they might feel disconnected, but they might respond well to, oh, he can pray for me. So we'll have prayer teams, typically prayer teams, kind of like a Steubenville conference. Typically it's a man and a woman. So my wife and I haven't told her yet, but she'll be on board. For example, someone comes up to us for prayer. We'll pray for them in that moment. It's a beautiful experience. I can't tell you how many times that my life has been touched by that. Even more so than the homily, or that's not like Father Mark, Father Brad, great homilies, but the Lord might have something for that in that moment. And it's also a great way for a parish to demonstrate hospitality. We really do love and care for you, and we want to take a few moments to pray for you if you need prayer.
And that visible presence of beyond having the prayer chains that
Right.
you don't know who out there is praying for you, but for somebody to actually stand there and stop and be physically and spiritually present with you.
Yeah, and to be clear, the prayer teams absolutely have their place. They're the ones keeping the church together, so it's not replacing that. Those the prayer line folks, and they're what holds the church together, and that continues. But this is something completely different. It's that visible presence. And it's also a great way to identify needs that people have. And if for the prayer teams to be done well, if someone comes up to you, we don't have enough to pay our rent, well, here's someone that can help. You know what I mean? So it's a great way to meet the needs. They might not reach out for help on the phone, but they might reach out for help in a prayer.
Fred, you are reaching out more than help with the prayer with the upcoming Life-Giving Wounds Retreat, March 15th, 16th, and 17th at Mater Dei Parish. If you are an adult child who has gone through divorce, and as you said, you say to me, oh, this isn't for me, I'm fine, it's all tucked away, don't open that. This retreat is for you. You can go online at materdeisc.org.
Correct.
/lifegivingwounds. Call Jeff Scoop if you need assistance. It is a $250 registration fee, folks, for the entire 3 days. And you are going to have Daniel and Bethany and Alex and all of the team. Fred, you are going to be there praying communion and confession part of the retreat too?
Yes, and we'll be doing music as well.
So listeners, a really fabulous retreat. Please register today. The registration deadline is due a week before, out of kindness for the caterers. We really want you to come and be a part of this. This is part of that expanded ministry. You don't need to be a Mater Dei parishioner. You don't necessarily have to be Catholic to come to Life-Giving Wounds. Well, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Alex. Thanks, Fred, and to everybody at Mater Dei Parish for sharing this fabulous retreat. And thanks to Ann Reed in studio here for bringing us Faith in Action, as well as to the folks from Mary's Choice, a pregnancy resource center here in Sioux City. Past Faith in Action shows can be found on SiouxlandCatholicRadio.com, YouTube, and a number of other podcasting platforms. And remember, listeners, a faithful reaction is good, but faith in action is so much better. Thanks for listening, and God bless.